recording.
Okay, so I'll share my screen and we'll get started.
Great.
And hi all, this is Chief Wright. Sorry I can't be on video right now. I'm stuck in traffic, so the phone will have to do.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for joining us. And there will be a video recording available of this that you can see later on, since there are graphics and drawings here that you may want to see. Oh, wait. Yeah. Does my screen look all right?
It looks great.
Okay, great. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the Garwood Bicycle Network Plan presentation. We thank you all for taking the time to join us today. I am Ashna Jain from the Voorhees Transportation Center at Rutgers University, and I'm joined here by my colleagues at VTC and the Complete Streets Technical Assistance team. Some housekeeping notes. Please mute your microphone so that we do not have any background noise during the presentation. Also note where the chat feature is on your screen, and also where the raise hand function is on your screen. You can use these to ask questions and give your feedback throughout the presentation. And yeah, lastly, this presentation will be recorded. It will be shared with you in a follow-up web page that you can access in case you have to take care of other things or leave in before 1.5 hours. We'll get started. And Mayor Sarah Todesco, would you like to say a few words before we start?
Sure, I would be happy to. So first of all, thank you, Ashna and James, for leading the presentation and for all of your work behind the scenes. She's gotten an A+ from me in communication. I don't know if you know this, but my full-time job is a teacher, so I like to give out A+ whenever possible. And the communication leading up to this has been fabulous. I also have to give big kudos to our borough engineer, Mike Disco, for being the one that actually wrote the grant, which we received in the amount of $10,000 to provide this study. And for those that are joining us here today, they might not realize, but Garwood was just one of 8 communities in the entire state that received this grant. So we are very grateful and we're very proud, and I very much look forward to the presentation today. Most importantly, this is the time for public input to begin. So we will be listening to the plan today carefully, and then we will be asking questions and getting feedback from the public. I want to thank all of the volunteer committee members and council members that I have on this video conference today, because those interest groups buying in is very important before we move forward, as well as the public at large. So it's great that we'll be able to post this video on the borough website and Facebook page to continue to get feedback even after today's meeting. And I would also be remiss if I did not thank our police chief, Jim Wright, for his contribution as well. I know there was a lot of information that was requested of the borough, and he and our engineer gave that forward. So it's been a very smooth process up until this point, and I anticipate it to continue. And I'm very, very grateful on behalf of the entire borough. So thanks again.
Yes, thank you. And that is great. And we look forward to the feedback throughout the presentation and later on during the commenting period, like you said. Yeah, so this is the agenda for today's meeting. First, we'll look into what this project is about, and then we'll go through the introductions with the Complete Streets Technical Assistance team and all of you. Then we'll look into some of the basics of Complete Streets and what a bicycle network plan is. Then after that, we'll go to the design and the recommendations proposed for Garwood. And the last would be questions, like any other questions and next steps. Also note that like throughout the presentation part of this workshop, there will be time slides for questions and feedback. Yes. So this is the second year of the NJTPA Complete Streets Technical Assistance Program. And under this program, communities applied for technical assistance to help make their local streets safer. We worked with 9 communities last year, and this year we are working with 8. The project is funded by North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, and it is conducted by Rutgers and Sustainable Jersey. We have Keith Hamus here with us from NJTPA. Keith, would you like to introduce yourself and talk about the program?
Sure, thank you, Ashna. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Keith Hamus. I'm a principal planner with the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority. For those that aren't familiar, this is the federally authorized metropolitan planning organization for the region of North Jersey. We have 13 counties on our board, as well as our Jersey City and Newark and statewide transportation agencies. Really, the major role for our agency is to prioritize federal funding for transportation improvement projects all throughout the region. But we also fund and conduct our own studies through various programs. This is the Complete Streets Technical Assistance Program. As Ashna and Mayor Tedisco alluded, this is a competitive program, second year into it, and you know, it is fairly competitive. So we've selected Garwood among, you know, several dozen other competing communities. So there was a successful bid for the implementation of a bike network plan. So we're kind of coming up with concepts. We heard from a kickoff meeting a couple months ago, some of the initial concerns and you know, the roadway network that we looked at, and now we're coming back with some different concepts to present to you and try to hear some of the public feedback on that, which is very important to any of our programs. So I'm just looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you, and I'll be on here if anyone has questions.
Great. Do we have Peter Bilton from NJDPA here with us?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think Peter's on.
Okay. Yes. So next we have Anne Heasley from Sustainable Jersey.
Hey, everybody. I'm Ann Heasley from Sustainable Jersey, and thank you, Mayor Tedesco, for the A+. I will take that. As she mentioned, I've communicated with you already, and I will continue after this meeting. Ashna mentioned that we are recording this, and I'll be sending out links with the recording and ways for you to continue to comment on what you see today. So thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Anne. And I'm Ashta from the Voorhees Transportation Center, and I also have my colleague James Sinclair here with us.
Hey everybody, James Sinclair from VTC. I'll mostly be listening in and monitoring the chat, so be sure to use the chat if you have any questions, and I'll let Ashna know so she can answer them for you. Thanks.
Thank you. So like a little bit of more background. Last fall, Garwood municipal team applied for help in making a bicycle corridor or network plan. Your application was one of 29 and was selected due to its strength. In late April, we met with the municipal team to ask about the application and review the study area. We'll go into details on the corridor later in the presentation. But first, let's get to know each other. So in the chat, we would like you to tell us your name, how long you have lived in Garwood, how often you bike around the town, and if there are any, like what barriers to bicycling you have encountered in the town. So here is an example on the screen. In the chat, you'll type your name, how long you have lived in Garwood, and how often do you bike, with the barriers to bicycling that you face in the town.
Ashna, as people type them in, do you want me to read them?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay. I assume everybody's typing.
Yeah. Let's give it a minute as everyone is typing.
Oh, and since we do have a couple of people on the phone, Do you guys, since you can't type, do you just want to introduce yourself very quickly on the phone? That's not. Okay, the typing is coming in. We have Mayor Sarah, 31 years old, hasn't biked in town since a teenager. Jessica Rivera Sue, 4 years, rides once a week around Garwood. Mark Lazaro, 11 years in Garwood, seldomly bikes in town because of traffic and safety issues. We have Adele Lewis, who's been there for 50 plus years. Husband and her frequently bike around town, but are concerned about the underpass with pedestrian traffic.
Great.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, great. We do have some recommendations for that area, so your feedback would be really appreciated.
Okay, we have Mary Emmons, been in Garwood for 25 years, does bike often and doesn't have issues as long as they're careful. Lisa Lee from Easy Ride, doesn't live in town or bike in town, but she's from the TMA, so a good resource for the town to work with. Joseph Burkhardt, 5 years, and does bike a little bit, sees speeding on Walnut and Oak. And then I guess as other people type in, they can read them on their own. I guess, Ashna, if you want to continue.
Yes, this looks great. We have residents from like 5 to 50 years and people with a variety in bicycling frequency. So I think we'll get a variety of feedback, which sounds great. Yeah, so let's get started. And now first we'll discuss some of the basics of complete streets. Many of you might already be familiar with the term, but here we'll still cover some of the basics again, as it is important for the discussion that everybody is on the same page. Complete streets are designed and operated to enable safe access for all users: pedestrians, bicyclists, car drivers, freight and transit users of all ages and abilities must be able to safely move along and across a complete street. Complete streets make it easy to cross the street, walk to shops, and bicycle to work. A complete street offers many travel choices, as it accommodates all modes, connects to a wider network of transportation system, is fully accessible to all, irrespective of how you get around. It varies according to context, depending on the needs of your community, and as an end goal, it improves safety for all. Its benefits are many and varied. Promotes healthy lifestyles by encouraging active modes of transportation like walking and biking, provides important connections to local destinations, create more livable communities, reduces traffic congestion by giving alternatives to driving, reduces reliance on fuel since it encourages greener modes of transportation, and it also makes fiscal sense because by incorporating sidewalks and bike lanes into the initial design of a project, it spares the expense of retrofitting later on, and it also encourages economic investment in the community. But how does complete streets actually create those benefits? Well, design affects what we do and how we do it and how happy we are doing it. Look at this top photo. Does that look like a place where you would want to drive or walk? And that's how, if you build for cars, you get cars. And if you build for people, you do get people. Let's think in terms of bicycles, since it's the same idea. Would you be comfortable bicycling on a street like that? Do you think kids should bike there? Probably not. What about the second image? Yes, probably yes. So this is why design matters, and it influences people's decision to bike or walk in a certain area. When it comes to bicycling, people are commonly divided into one of these groups: the strong and the fearless, which is like 1% of the population, can bike anywhere and everywhere. They love to bike and nothing can stand in their way, not infrastructural conditions. A larger group, 5 to 10%, are more enthused and confident people. They're a little more picky about where they will bike, and they prefer low stress roadways and paths. The next is most of the population that is interested but concerned, and it makes up about 60% of the population. They have biked before, but don't do it often because they don't feel safe. And when they do bike, they do so in parks or as a part of events. These people can become enthused and confident with improved facilities, encouragement, and infrastructure and overall experience. Lastly, of course, there are some folks who simply have no interest in bicycling, about 30%, or cannot due to a physical condition. However, these folks likely have friends or family members that are interested in bicycling. This is a map of Garwood and the level of comfort along its road. This also includes bicycle and pedestrian crashes for a 5-year period, 2014 to 2018 in consideration. We see that Garwood only has this red road, the state route, which is like a high traffic stress road where only very experienced, the 1%, the strong and the fearless would bike. Then we also have the county road, which is orange as well as red. This is high traffic stress as well as moderate traffic stress, where enthused and confident and the very experienced bicyclists would ride. But most of Garwood comes under little traffic stress, or where most people who are interested but concerned would bike. But while this is suitable for most adult cyclists, it could be demanding and could need more considerations for children. And we also see that Center Street intersects with these two major roads that have more stressful bicycling conditions. We are here to help Garwood create a bicycle network plan that leads to the question, what is a bicycle network plan? A bicycle network plan envisions how to complete the streets by providing accommodations for bicyclists. It identifies and builds a practical option for those who may want to bicycle but are not comfortable doing so on an incomplete street. These facilities should provide connections to common destinations like workplaces, schools, transit, shops, and recreation. And we'll see and find these places in Garwood around the study area. Almost all of these destinations are also near the home, which is where most people spend the majority of their time. According to the National Household Survey, 50% of all trips in the US are short distance trips, like under 3 miles, and they could be done quickly and easily on a bicycle. The reason most of us don't do this is because roads are not designed for it. And by the way, this data is before COVID. Yeah, a successful bicycle network plan is one that shows what kind of facilities work best for each road segment, taking into account everything that makes it unique. This includes factors like road width, speed limit, parking, and other unique circumstances. A good bicycle network plan is convenient, it's continuous, connected, and complete. But that's not all. It should also be comfortable, safe and intuitive, and visible for all ages and abilities. So before we look into specific types of bicycle infrastructure, any questions on complete street and its fundamentals? Okay.
There's none in the chat, by the way.
Okay, that's good. Let's move forward. And here we'll look into specific types of bicycle infrastructure facilities and options. When it comes to safety, designing for bicyclists means reducing conflict with other modes, improving their visibility, and establishing clear guidelines on right-of-way. We'll start by discussing the basic types of bicycle infrastructure that are visible, intuitive, and establish those guidelines for usage. There is a range of options that are available that vary from no separation from cars to complete separation. And the more separation separation usually means the safer and more comfortable. However, sometimes extra investment is not needed if traffic volumes and speeds are very low. So we'll start with shared lane markings or shadows that offer least separation. Their purpose is to remind motorists that they are sharing the road with bicyclists and the bicyclists have a lane. It also reminds bicyclists that they should ride away from the edge of the street. However, they offer no physical separation between the two modes. They're likely to help existing bicyclists, but they are not very successful at encouraging new people to bike. According to the New Jersey Complete Streets Design Manual, which we have referred to for the design and recommendations proposed throughout this plan, these shadows are only appropriate for roadways with speeds of 25 miles per hour or less, and with traffic volumes of under 2,500 vehicles in a day. The left image here is in Camden, and the right image here is in Patterson. Some municipalities like Boston and Long Beach, as shown in these two images, have tried this experimental treatment called super shadow, which adds additional visibility. The rule is the same, that cars and bikes share the same space, same lane, but the added paint makes it even more clear that bicyclists belong. We are not aware of super shadow treatments in New Jersey as of now. A more common treatment in residential neighborhoods is the bicycle boulevard. Bicycle boulevard combines shadows and signs with more significant design treatments to prioritize bicycle travel, usually on secondary roads. Common treatments include extra large shadows, slow speed limit signs, mini roundabouts and speed bumps, and traffic diverters. We'll cover more on mini roundabouts and speed bumps later in the presentation. They can be a great way to create an attractive bicycle route to popular destinations like train stations or high schools. The image on the right here is from Ocean City, New Jersey. A bicycle lane is a space designated specifically and only for bicyclists. It needs to be at least 4 feet next to a curb, or at least 5 feet if there is street parking, but larger is always better. When space is available, a painted buffer, as in this image, can be added for even more distance between bicyclists and other vehicles. This also helps to visually narrow the driving lane, which can help to reduce speeds. How effective a bicycle lane is at getting more people to ride depends on the context of a roadway. On a high-speed commercial corridor, a bicycle lane is still not only attractive to on a high-speed commercial corridor, a bicycle lane is still only attractive to confident bicyclists. The image on the left here is from Cherry Hill in New Jersey, and this image is from Camden. So protected bicycle lane is another infrastructure option that fits on a wide street and adds even more safety by putting a barrier between bicyclists and cars. The barrier could be a median, as in this image, or it could be parked cars, as in this image, along with a buffer. So this offers more safety because there is limited interaction with other traffic. For this treatment, you need at least 8 feet, and they work best if there aren't many driveways or turning conflicts. And special care needs to be taken at intersections, which can be the most stressful part of a bicycle trip. Finally, dedicated bicycle path allows two-way traffic and can be in the roadway or next to it. 10 feet width is best, but the minimum is 8 feet. And it is important to minimize turning conflicts. Bicycle paths can be shared with pedestrians, in which case it is called a multi-use trail. Almost everyone who rides a bicycle is comfortable bicycling on a path or a trail. It is easy to see how comfortable people feel when you can spot children riding on bicycle paths. Quickly, I would like to mention that a full bicycle network and plan includes some additional components that can be very localized. These things include bicycle boxes that help bicyclists make a left turn, or it could be bicycle signals, which remove turning conflicts, and of course, bicycle parking at destinations. However, for today, we want to focus on the wider network and the on-road infrastructure. While the final plan will include some site-specific recommendations, today we want to talk about the general infrastructure overall. So before we jump into the draft concepts, any questions about the previous slides?
None have come in for the chat. Does anyone have a question? You want to raise your hand? We could call on you. All right. I don't see any hands raised.
Yeah.
I see a hand actually, Bill.
How can you not see a hand?
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, I was looking for the Zoom hand, not the real hand. I apologize,
okay. One of my comments later on would be about the bus and the train, because they just canceled my train from Plainfield and I just biked all the way home. So I'm sitting here sweating. So I missed the first 9 minutes. You will have, I understand complete streets, you'll have actual areas or recommendations outside of these concepts later, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We'll go through the study corridor and specific recommendations for each street. Okay, so let's get started. Here you can see the study corridor. It includes 6 streets. We'll go through them in the order of their priority, which is as listed. We'll start with Center Street, moving on to Walnut. Then we'll discuss about 2nd Avenue and Spruce Avenue in detail. We'll then briefly look into 4th Avenue, discussing its unique recommendations that are not already covered in the presentation. And finally, we will not go into Pine Avenue separately, but its recommendation and treatments would be the same as other streets and are covered in the presentation. Here is a map highlighting Center Street, and we'll cover it in 3 parts, moving from south to north. The first part is from Unami Park to Willow Ave. And the speed limit here, as shown in the data, is 25 miles per hour. In fact, the speed limit for all the roads in the study corridor is the same. We also received traffic data for these streets from the Garwood Police Department, which was really helpful in getting a true snapshot of how drivers behave on these streets. So thank you, Garwood Police Department. According to this data, as we see, 85th percentile speed for Center Street is 32 miles per hour in the northbound direction. This is the speed, for those who don't know, that 85% of the traffic does not exceed. It is used to determine the posted speed limit on a road, which is expected to be within 5 miles per hour of this speed. So here, the 85th percentile speed being 32 is 2 miles per hour higher than expected, indicating that speeding is a concern on this side of the street. Additionally, it sees about, we see that it sees about 3,000 vehicles in either direction on an average in a day. So it's not like it's a moderately, it has a moderate average daily vehicle traffic. And according to the New Jersey 2017 Complete Streets Design Guide, given this volume and 85th percentile speed, shared use lanes are not recommended on Center Street. Lastly, trucks over 4 tons, that is bigger than a small pickup truck, are excluded from this section. And hence 10 to 11 feet driving lanes are more than sufficient for this road. This is how the first part of Center Street generally looks like. It has shoulder lines, parking, and 2 drive lanes. This is the street section of the same thing. And the proposed design here, as the road is wide enough so that bicycle lanes can be incorporated by changing the striping. Unlike a shoulder, a bicycle lane is maintained to safe travel standards. So here we can have the 2 drive lanes and the parking lanes and 6 feet bike lanes on either side. The second part is from Willow Ave to South Ave, which is the County Road 610. It is 50 feet wide with commercial and office uses on both sides. The traffic information for this part would be the same as described earlier, and trucks over 4 tons are also excluded from this section. This is how it looks like. Here, the 2 lanes kind of divide with the road diet to make a 3rd lane, which is the dedicated left turn lane at the intersection with the county road. Yeah, so this is the street section near the intersection. We have the left turn lane and the other 2 lanes with parking. With 3 lanes here, this section does not have the space for bicycle lanes and parking on both sides. In order to continue the bicycle path, around 5 parking spaces must be removed from the southbound side of the street. Note that a bicycle lane is recommended for this section based on its average daily traffic volume and speed. So if we take out those 5 parking spots, we'll have bike lanes on both sides with a barrier on the southbound side. And this is a second alternative in which we do not take out parking, and we have bicycle lane on the northbound side only and a shadow on the other side. So before we move on to next part, does anyone have any questions or comments or feedback? Preference of alternative?
I'm not
Chief right here. I do have a question.
Yes.
Those parking spaces are pretty valuable for our downtown businesses. Is there an overlay that I could see how you would do the bike lane with the Sharrow lane?
This is the alternative for that. Like the bicyclist would share the driving lane with the cars on the southbound side, and the parking lane would still be there.
I just was hoping to see it like as an over the top view to see how the lane marking.
An aerial kind of view.
Oh, no, we do not have an aerial view. I mean, we have these photos of like, I think this is the southbound side. So, and these are the parking spots we are talking about. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what was the, I guess, the thought process of for the second option of doing the Sharrow going south as opposed to going north? Does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
The
So,
Sharrow.
so basically on your second version.
Yes. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, so
why on one side, not the other? What was the rationale?
Yeah, so we prioritize the bike lane on the northbound side because as the data indicates, like here, it has higher 85th percentile speed. And if we like look at the average daily traffic for the northbound and southbound side differently, northbound side had more traffic as well. So it had more traffic and higher speeds, which is why we placed the bike lane on the northbound side.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, comparing the alternatives, I think these are 5 parking spaces, and if the municipality could maybe adjust them near those businesses, then this could be a good option for bicyclists. But yes, we can include both of these recommendations in the final report.
Ashna, we have Bill's raising his hand, his actual hand again.
Yeah, I don't have it. I don't have a what do you call it? Raise hand button on the bottom.
Okay.
Yes.
Chief, and if it's a choice between 1 or 2, I would definitely go with number 2. We need to keep those parking spaces for the businesses, and a shower for 1 block certainly makes more sense than not having a way northbound at all. We certainly don't want to come up center, end at Willow, and have people on the sidewalk. So if you're asking as you did for choice, alternative 2.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Ashna,
Yes.
Lisa Lee in the chat just wants clarification on which businesses are those parking spots in front of.
That's a good question. I am not sure.
So I have Google Maps open. It looks like, what side of the street were you saying? Northbound, is that correct?
Southbound. This is the southbound side.
Okay, southbound, there's, according to Google Maps, Golden Scissors Haircutters, Mayor and Mayor, and someone in the middle who...
It's a daycare.
Yeah, it's a daycare.
Got a daycare.
Like a school. Yeah, daycare school.
Yep, RC Kids Academy, bilingual preschool.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of a moot point. We can't afford to lose the parking spots for either side of the street because of the other retail businesses on the other side.
Okay, thank you for the feedback, and I would like to move forward. If you have like other comments or feedback on this, you can like keep posting it in the chat. So yeah, for time, let's move forward. Yeah, so the next section is from South Ave to North Ave, and this is the last part of Center Street where the road crosses the railway line. It is also 50 feet wide, and it has the train station, and I think a new mixed-use development that's gonna come on the other side. This is the only section in the study area where trucks over 4 tons are not excluded. So trucks do go here. This is how it looks like. It has a raised median in the center, 4 driving lanes, and a separated sidewalk. We can see the railway bridge going above it. This is a closer image of how the railway bridge and the road looks like. In the section, we can see that the separated sidewalk here has a clear width of 10 to 12 feet, which excludes like columns, light poles, or any other obstructions. The proposal here is to convert these wide sidewalks to shared use paths that bicyclists and pedestrians can share. This will offer a physically separated and safer path for bicyclists. In order to avoid an increased conflict at the terminal intersection, we also propose that the bicycle movement in these paths would be one way on either side in the direction of the traffic. Next, we have some recommendations for the Center Street at South Ave intersection, which is challenging because of heavy traffic on both of these streets. And also note that South Ave has a speed limit of 35 miles per hour, and it is 40 feet wide. Yes. Now, this is how it looks like. It has pedestrian striped crossings and pedestrian signals. This map shows the crash data for Garwood bicycle and pedestrian crashes from 2015 to 2019. And we can see that bicycle and pedestrian crashes cluster at and near this intersection, as well as the next intersection, which is with the state road. And yeah, this image shows the new development that's, I think, getting constructed on one corner of this intersection. Yeah. The proposal includes here curb extensions on 2 corners and bicycle path markings through the intersection. The markings will help create an intuitive path for bicyclists and increase their visibility to drivers. And yeah, this South Ave, I believe, is a county road. The extensions here will reduce the crossing distances, and their turning radii will be of a width that accounts for truck traffic here. Additionally, we also recommend, if needed, bicycle signals that can further simplify bicycle movements at the intersection by reducing conflicts. These images are examples of curb ramps designed for bicycle lanes. Since here we'll need the bicyclists to go over the sidewalk, these design shows how, like this image is in New Brunswick, they show how like bicycle lanes can be transferred to the sidewalk. And although these images are not at intersections, the same thing can be done at the intersection, and curb ramps as well. Also, Center Street and North Ave is another challenging intersection in this corridor. We will not discuss in detail today here, but the final report will include similar plan and recommendations for that intersection as well. Yeah, so before we jump on to the next street, any questions and comments for the last half of Center Street or the intersection?
So Ashna, in the chat, we have a comment from Jonathan who says there's a lot of blind spots under the bridge. And then Bill responded, yes, but it is a necessary connection. And I also see Jeffrey Kleinsorigen has a hand raised, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that.
No, that's correct. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, I'm jumping back. I raised my hand towards the end of the other part with the parking spaces. The sidewalk there is, depending on where, closer to the police department, it's like 14 feet wide. And down by Golden Scissors, it's like, I think 10, 12 feet wide. I don't know if there would be opposition to putting the bike lane actually on the sidewalk in that area. I was just down in Delaware, and that's the way everything is. All the sidewalks are like 10 feet wide, and it's half people, half bicycle. At least for that block, so we could save parking spaces.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and we can look into it if it has the clear minimum width that we need for a shared use path. That's possible. Yep.
Hey, Ashna, we have a few more comments. Lisa Lee mentioned that more lights are needed under the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen Greet likes the idea of the bikes there. Lisa Lee suggests having a bike symbol painted where the bike lane moves onto the sidewalk. And Jonathan suggests perhaps dedicated one side only to bikes instead of having one way bikes each side.
Okay. Yeah, I think that seems like a good option. We'll need to consider like turning conflicts here if we are asking both directions to go on one side where the train station is, but we can definitely evaluate that alternative and scenario as well. Thank you.
And I don't see any more hands raised or any other questions.
Okay, yeah, let's move forward. So we have enough time for all the portions. The next street is Walnut Street. We'll cover it in two parts. Again, moving from south to north. The first part here is between North Avenue and 2nd Avenue, and it is 38 feet wide with commercial and office uses on both sides. And we do not have detailed traffic information for this section. This is how it looks like at the intersection with a dedicated turn lane and parking on the other side. Closer to 2nd Ave, it has 2 lanes, parking only on the northbound side, and it also has a pedestrian beacon close to the 2nd Avenue intersection where the school is. This is how it looks like with a dedicated turn lane closer to the North Ave intersection. And in the proposed design, we have a shadow on one side, and in alternative 1, we need to remove 4 parking spaces here in order to continue the bicycle path on the northbound side to the school. Yeah, in the second alternative, we do not remove parking, and there are shadows on both the sides. Yes. The next section is from 2nd Avenue to 4th Avenue. This is also 38 feet wide, and it has residential uses and the school. This is how it looks like, 2 lanes and parking on both sides. The existing design, as we already discussed, this is how it looks like. And in the proposed design, alternative 1, if we take out parking on one side of these 2 blocks, we can give bicycle lanes on either side. And this will enhance bicycling to the school and complete the connection going to Center Street. In the second alternative, we have shadows on both sides and parking on both sides. So yes, before we go on to the next street, does anyone have any questions, comments, preference of alternative, lives in the area, feedback?
So Ashna, there's just a little more conversation about the previous train station section. Lisa Lee mentioned a survey to see, if people would rather bike on the sidewalk or on the roadway. Jonathan asked if the NJ Transit corridor has been considered.
NJ Transit corridor has been considered. I'm not sure what that means. Do you mean like going on the road? Like going here?
Jonathan, do you want to get on and clarify what you mean? Oh, for east-west travel. Are you talking about South Avenue, or do you want to unmute yourself and just clarify? Oh, he knows the right-of-way the train takes. So Jonathan is asking if anything has been considered using the excessive right-of-way along the train route.
There was a study. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. There was a study done over 10 years ago. I'm trying to think of the initials for a bus rapid transit system using the Raritan Valley Line corridor. If you're not familiar with it, I would encourage you to look it up. New Jersey Transit funded it.
Mm-hmm.
Rapid transit system that would go all the way from Newark Airport down the, trying to get my bearings, through Jersey Gardens, through IKEA, over to the old Central Railroad line, through Cranford to Garwood, using that old rail corridor, which is, we know is a Raritan Valley line, and it'd be interesting to look at.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you. So like, would NJ Transit's website be a good place to find this study?
My guess would be no, only because when they did it, they actually had money. Now we know they don't have anything. I have a study at work. I mean, I can send it to you.
Yeah, that would be great. Yes.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then Lisa Lee mentioned she prefers having bike lanes for the kids riding to school, safer for the children, and she thinks parents will agree.
Yeah.
Vince Carney is on here, right? I believe Vince is one of the participants.
Yes, Vincent Carney is.
His wife is the crossing guard at the corner of Walnut and 2nd. That's a dangerous intersection. You may not look at it, but you might want to talk to the crossing guards in terms of recommendations there, because drivers don't listen to the crossing guards at that corner at all. Vince probably doesn't want to mention it, but his wife has only been hit a number of times.
Oh.
So separation is very important.
Yeah. Thank you. That's great feedback and so important to know. And we would appreciate any more feedback on that intersection. Please put it in the chat, or you can also send it to us later. Yeah.
Hey, I see Stephen Greet has a hand raised. Stephen, do you have a comment about the section? Stephen, if you're talking, we cannot hear you.
Yeah, we have there's a lot of development going on along the Raritan Valley line, obviously, and I think that's a real venue to go ahead and revisit and see if we can get the New Jersey Transit to kind of come on board with providing some kind of access, either combination of pedestrian and or bicycle along that way. So commuters, for example, from our development in Garwood in its own right, from Paperboard, the future Paperboard, or the future development at Garden Estates can get access to the train station.
Oh, yes, great point. Thank you. We'll definitely look into and see if we can add a recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Right.
Okay.
And there's just, Ashna, I just want to mention there's a lot of chat, just people agreeing that that intersection of Walnut Street is very dangerous. People noting people running stop signs, close calls, very busy, traffic moves quickly, especially during school drop off and pickup times.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Great feedback, and please keep it running as we are also moving on to Second Avenue right now. So we'll cover it in two parts, going from west to east, and then we'll look at some of the some common treatments for the entire street. The first part here is from Maple Street to Walnut Street, which is one way in the westbound direction. Yeah, it has residential uses, a park, and the school building. It is 38 feet wide, but in front of the school, it changes to 54. The 85th percentile speed for the road here on the westbound side is 25. However, drivers have been seen going up to 68 miles per hour. Additionally, it sees about 1,000 to 1,200 vehicles on an average in a day. This is how the street looks like in the residential part of it, with parking on both sides and the road in one-way direction. Then in front of the park, it has parking only on one side. Then in front of the school, it widens to 54 feet, as we can see in this image, and there is a mid-block crossing. Yeah. So now we'll look at the street section for the road, the existing street section, a 24 feet drive lane with parking on both sides. In front of the park, there is no parking, so the drive lane is 31 feet with parking on one side. And then in front of the school, there is a drop-off zone, parking on the other side, and a 40 feet driving space in the middle. In the proposed design for this road, we propose a bicycle lane and a contra-flow bicycle lane on the street, as it provides access to two high-use destinations. With one-way traffic, the road has the space to accommodate both of these lanes. The contra-flow bike lane here is separated from the traffic through a 2 feet buffer throughout the length of the block. In front of the park, the section is the same only because there is no parking on this side. The bike lane would abut the curb and the sidewalk. And in front of the school, again, when there is parking on this side, the bicycle lane would be abutting the parking. And on the school side, the bicycle lane and the drop-off zone would be separated by physical barriers, so the people who are dropping off kids do not intrude into the bicycle zone. Yeah. To make it a little simpler, here is how the bicycle lanes would go along the block. On the park side, it just stays beside parking wherever there is parking. And on the other side, it stays next to parking, and then it goes to in front of the school sidewalk. And the drop-off zone is separated from the bicycle lane with physical barriers. Yep. The next part on Second Ave is from Walnut Street to Gallows Hill Road. Unlike the first part, this is two-way, 38 to 40 feet wide, mostly residential uses on the side, but it also has St. Anne's Convent and Church on the side. We have already discussed the traffic on the westbound side of this road. Eastbound, the 85th percentile speed is 29, which is within 5 miles per hour of the posted speed limit. However, we have the data shows that drivers go up to 70 miles per hour. This is how it looks like in front of the St. Anne's Convent and Church, where there is a mid-block crossing. And after that, it's two-lane with parking on both sides. Note that the trees here is an important street element that deters the tendency to speed. However, we know that some drivers still do. This is an element that we will also notice in other streets like Spruce Avenue, 4th, and Pine Avenue as well. The potential options to create bicycle accommodations here is an advisory shoulder or an advisory bicycle lane treatment. This is an experimental treatment that does not yet exist in New Jersey. However, there are about 20 examples across the country, and it is a common treatment in Europe. As you see in these images, In this case, the road works like two-lane road if there is no bicyclist on it. But if there are bicyclists, then it works like a one-lane road where the traffic moves into the center to make space for the bicyclist. Currently, the roadway does not have any striping. Second Avenue that divides directions of traffic, which means a driver wishing to pass a bicyclist moves into the opposing lane of travel to pass. An advisory shoulder is similar, except that the marking in the roadway makes it clear how much space the vehicle needs to give the bicyclist. In terms of driving behavior, it is similar to how people would typically drive here. That is, they drive in the middle and then they move on to the side when they see oncoming traffic. Here is an example from Edina in Minnesota on how an advisory shoulder could look like on a residential street with parking on both sides. This is how the proposed design advisory bicycle lanes could look like on this section of 2nd Avenue. In addition to the change in striping and paint for more visible demarcation, traffic calming strategies could be investigated to help enforce a lower speed limit. Yeah. And these are like drawings of some additional signs and striping that are included with an advisory lane being tested in Vermont. Yeah, so before we move on, any questions, comments, feedback?
So Ashna, I just want to know from the chat, there was some discussion about speeding. The only question was if additional bike racks are going to be mentioned in the plan.
Yes, that's a good question. I think we'll definitely try to cover bike parking and bike racks and explore opportunities for that in the plan. Yes, thank you.
And one other thing, one of the things that I'm really into, and I know pedestrians are loops. And we have everything, you know, one direction, other direction, but 2nd Avenue and 4th, which is the next street you're going to, provide a great opportunity for a loop. And so what I'd like to look at, and obviously it's not my call, but when you get to the end, when you get to 2nd into Cranford, you've got Gallows Hill Road there, which is a nothing street. I'm sure you saw it. And if you go up to 3rd, Gallows Hill, how would you describe it, Mayor? One lane, maybe each way?
One large lane, no curbs, one Garwood house on it.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Very low traveled street. And if you get to 3rd, when you get to 3rd, there's actually borough owned property. It goes from 3rd to 4th. The 1998 I actually recommended that that be converted into a passive park for the neighborhood. Well, that has never actually been implemented. Providing a bike lane through that could start of actually making that a park there, a passive park. And so you could go from 2nd to 3rd to 4th, and then turn on 4th and work your way west. And I know I'm jumping ahead, but you started at Maple. My recommendation to you would be to go into Westfield, because if you take 3rd into Westfield, you go into Gumpert's Park, and which is where Westfield has their bike route. And you could connect with Westfield's bike route, go around Gumpert's Park, create another loop, and then come back out onto 2nd, and you'd have a complete loop on the north side of town from the Cranford border to the Westfield border.
Can you mention the name of that park once again for me?
Sure, who can spell it? Is it G-U-M-P-E-R-T? Is that right?
I know Jonathan O'Hay will know.
I think it's Gumpert, G-U-M-P-E-R-T. Yep, Jonathan has it, G-U-M-B, Gumpert, G-U-M-B.
Okay, thank you.
Ashna, I can provide a map of that vacant lot that is municipal property bill referenced over on 3rd Avenue if you'd like it.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful, and I can explore that option and how that could tie into what we have already. Yeah.
I also see a couple hands raised. Let's start with Jim Wright.
Yeah, Ashna, going back again to 2nd Avenue, the idea of a shared lane with the 2 bike lanes on the side. Do you see that as a traffic calming device as well? It seems like it would be.
Like this advisory bike lane treatment?
Yeah, that's what I was referring to, yeah.
Yeah, I think it does look like a traffic calming treatment as well. But actually the next section kind of talks about this. And I think like, even though the design here is like that, you may want to like put additional features that make sure that people stick to it and follow it as well. Yeah.
Right.
All
We
right,
also have.
I'm all ears.
Oh, sorry. We also have Stephen Greed, who has a hand raised.
I think that's a great concept that Bill came up with, and I think I agree. I think that really should be looked at and maybe pursued, because that would lend really access to a wide variety of areas for bicyclists and pedestrians too.
Yeah, thank you. It does look like there are many opportunities there, and we will definitely explore them. Yeah.
Right. Then Mark mentioned he really likes that proposal that's on the screen right now. And Aaron has a question. Is it expected that bikes would observe the one-way section of 2nd Avenue, which I believe he's referring to the section between Walnut and Maple?
Bikes would observe like this section.
Yeah, Aaron, do you want to unmute yourself and clarify your question?
Would bicycles actually be limited to going the right way on the one-way street?
I think I would like to keep this alternative, like since there is this park on other side. Plus, yeah. But what do you think? Would you like to see bicycle lane only on one side here or both sides?
I like the bicycle lanes on both sides. The question is, bicycles, especially with children in the area, would be going one way, both ways on that street, not just one way. But if you follow the strict interpretation of the traffic laws, I believe that bicycles are supposed to only go in the direction of traffic on a street.
No, I think there is this concept of contra-flow lanes that's recommended if there is like high use destination, and which I believe because of the park and the school is there. So that would be recommended, like a contra-flow bicycle lane would be recommended for this block.
So bicycles would be expected to go either east or west along that section of 2nd Avenue.
Yes, like they can be like allowed to go both in both directions. Yeah.
Okay, Lisa Lee just has a quick question for Bill.
Which I'm answering.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, let's move forward because
we have one more raised hand, John Bartolik, who hasn't spoken before.
Yes, I'm just tagging on to this point about having a one-way street and having bicycle traffic coming into the one lane of car traffic. That's the drop-off zone. That's like the death zone of this area. Nobody's paying attention. You've got pedestrians, you've got people cutting in and out. Do you know that area well enough in terms of how it's really used at school drop-off and pickup times to make that kind of a recommendation? You could be serving up cyclists for incoming traffic.
Okay, so like, are you concerned about this intersection?
I'm concerned about the fact when you are going in the traffic flow direction, unless I'm completely misunderstanding your diagram, that's where all of the parents are dropping off children at the school in the morning.
Yes.
And it's chaos. And if you're going to feed into that incoming bicycle traffic in a lane on that school side of the street, I'm just asking if you really understand the usage patterns at those critical times to make that kind of recommendation. Because if you're not sure, I think you need to take a step back and revisit that area, because that is the, just in terms of pedestrian and vehicular traffic in those critical hours of the day, in the morning and the afternoon, absolute chaos.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and which was our major concern as well, which is why we like separated the bicycle lane here from the car zone by physical barriers. So really, you can't, like there should not be no conflict. And I think we also, like people mentioned before, that Walnut at 2nd Ave, this intersection is really dangerous. And we would look into like the conflict points and movement across this intersection, and also can suggest more recommendations to minimizing those so it's more safer.
Okay, it may be that I just can't envision how you are protecting those incoming cyclists from the people leaving the drop-off zone in their vehicles. So perhaps I'm the one not being able to envision it. But I certainly do think it is a consideration, given the intensity of the use at those critical times of the day.
Yeah, I think that's great feedback, and it's really valuable, and we'll definitely make sure and check that the recommendation here works.
So Ashna, according to Vincent Kearney, he suggests that the school drop-off is usually on 3rd Street, and only the late arrivals actually get dropped off on 2nd. But Mary is noting that there is some drop-off on 2nd as well. So definitely one of the challenges is because of COVID-19, we weren't able to observe school drop-off in person. So it's great to have all this feedback from you all, since once this project started, school had already been called off.
Yeah.
Or one other possibility, because John is absolutely right. Just like Unami Park, which we all know as the major pedestrian walking loop here in Cranford, you make this a one-way system. You make it one way in east, Ellis Hill north, loop back west on 4th, and you make it one way. That way you get on the correct side of the street away from the pickup drop-off zone totally. And that would also allow you, I believe, I didn't measure this out, but if you just have a one-way bicycle direction on 2nd, you might still be able to keep both lanes of traffic. But I would suggest, checking into that.
Yeah, that's helpful. We'll definitely look into it. I think we did explore some drop-off pickup zone designs, especially for school buildings, to put into this recommendation, but we will definitely research a little bit more and consider all of your feedback to see what could be more functional and better.
Safe Routes to School would never encourage you to have bicyclists coming into a street where you've got possible drop-off times on both sides of the street. That would be really dangerous for those children riding to school. It would be better to have them enter the school property on another street. So, and I think, especially if they're going to be going against traffic, those parents could be just focused on dropping off their kids and not being late. And kids riding fast towards them, that's very introducing too much conflict.
Yeah.
We have a safe travel guide. Maybe I can share with you.
Yeah, yes, that would be really helpful. And yeah, thank you. That's a great concern. Yeah. Okay, let's move forward because we still have a few concepts to cover. So we looked into the designs for 2nd Ave and the advisory shoulder treatment. Adding on to these changes, we also propose looking at bicycle boulevard treatments on 2nd Ave, like along all of its length. which will prioritize bicycles and pedestrians. As mentioned earlier, this is done by lowering speed limits and installing traffic calming measures that discourage cut-through traffic. Note that these treatments are general and they can also be applied to similar streets, so which includes Spruce Avenue, 4th Avenue, and Pine Avenue. And a bicycle boulevard treatment can be a very cost-effective way to improve bicycle conditions. The specific tools that we propose would be a 20 miles per hour speed limit sign, enhanced signage and pavement markings, chicanes and neck downs, and mini roundabouts, which we'll take a look at shortly, and speed humps and raised crosswalk if speeding remains a concern. These are examples of what a chicane and neck down could look like. These photos are of a recent project in Morristown on a residential street where speeding was an issue. And the city created pinch points to slow drivers down. Chicanes and neck downs can also deter parking in prohibited areas and increase the visibility at crossings. And also note that it is possible to install them at a very low cost to test their effectiveness using paints and bollards. Eventually, they can be converted to a permanent design that adds greenery to the neighborhood. Here is an example of how a neck down in front of St. Anne's Convent and Church of St. Anne could look like at the mid-block crossing. And currently, parking is not allowed 50 feet on both sides of the crossing. But as we can see from this satellite image in 2019, seems like cars are parked there. So this could be an alternative to prevent that. And in future, if speeding still remains a concern, like after incorporating all of those suggestions, the crosswalks here could be converted to a raised crosswalk with a broader, flatter speed hump that is bicycle friendly, as seen in this image from Bellevue in Washington. And here they are labeled as speed bumps. These humps allow for little to no discomfort at speeds lower than 25 miles per hour and will only affect vehicles going at higher speeds. Additionally, they are designed with emergency vehicles in mind. These are examples of what the mini traffic circles or roundabouts could look like. It is possible to install them as well at a very low cost to test their effectiveness, as seen here in Denver on the left. Eventually, they can be converted to a permanent circle that adds greenery, as seen in Seattle. We will look at implementation examples for a mini roundabout later in the presentation. Another alternative that we can recommend here, and I think we discussed a lot about this already, is to like turn the road between Cedar and Oak to one way in the opposite direction. This alternative will use traffic diverters, which are a great way to restrict a roadway to local traffic and bicycles only. We can further recommend analysis of this alternative in the report. Yeah. So before we jump on to the next street, any questions, comments? And we'll try to do it quickly because we still have a few more streets to go over. Yeah.
So nothing in the chat related to this section, and I'm not seeing any raised hands.
Okay. Thank you. And if you have like any other feedback, just keep, you can post it in the chat and we can take a look at it later on. Yeah. Next, we move on to Spruce Avenue, and we'll cover it in two parts. The first part is from Columbus Avenue to Center Street, and it is 36 feet wide with residential uses on either side. Eastbound, the road sees about 1,200 vehicles on an average in a day, and the 85th percentile speed here is 32 miles per hour, which indicates that speeding is a concern on this section. We do not have detailed traffic information for the westbound side here. Yep. It has, as seen in these images, it has 2 lanes. Okay, and residential uses and parking on either side. This is how the existing section looks like. This does not have the width to accommodate dedicated bicycle lanes. So we propose sharrows on either side, And I think advisory bicycle treatment that we discussed earlier is also an alternative for this road if the municipality decides to work with it, like after maybe testing it on 2nd Avenue. The second part of Spruce Avenue is from Center Street to Garwood Park. It is 2 feet narrower than the first part, so it is 34 feet. And it's mostly residential with the church on one side and the Garwood Park at the end. It has 2 lanes, like same section, 2 lanes, parking on either side. This is how it looks like, and similar to the previous section, this also does not have the space to accommodate dedicated bicycle infrastructure, and we propose sharrows on either side. Similar to 2nd Avenue, we recommend bicycle boulevard treatments on Spruce Avenue to complement and add on to the sharrows to reduce vehicular speeds and prioritize bicycle and pedestrians. As previously mentioned, this will include lower speed limits, enhanced signage and pavement markings, chicanes and neck downs, mini roundabouts, and potentially speed humps and raised crosswalks if speeding remains a concern. Let's look into a simple illustration of a mini roundabout treatment. But before we do that, here is a quick reminder on what it looks like. Recall that it is possible to install these treatments in both low cost and high cost ways. We propose a mini roundabout treatment on Spruce Avenue at Center Street. FHWA's lessons on traffic calming indicate that mini roundabouts are safer than 2-way and 4-way stop signs and signalized intersections. They also reduce the number of conflict points at intersections and reduce vehicular speeds. This design incorporates curb extensions at all the 4 corners and tighter turn radii to reduce vehicular speeds even more and increase bicyclist and pedestrian safety and visibility. We also propose these intersection treatments, curb extensions, tighter turn radii at other intersections on Spruce Avenue, since speeding is a concern here. As mentioned, they'll reduce these speeds, decrease crossing distance, and also limit inappropriate parking near crosswalks that deteriorates or prevents visibility. They can be properly designed to accommodate buses wherever appropriate, and they can be paired with raised crosswalks if speeding remains a concern. As shown in these 2 pictures, there could be a variety of ways to implement them, both high cost as well as low cost. So before we move on to the next street, any questions for Spruce Avenue and the recommendations for it?
So I don't see any hands raised. Mark asked Chief Wright if he had any experience with these mini roundabouts.
Me.
No, to the police chief. But the police chief hasn't responded. And I don't see any other hands raised.
It looks like the chief is typing into the chat.
Okay, great.
Okay, yeah, let's move forward.
Sorry, couldn't get my mic on for a second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have no experience with these. They're intriguing to me, so I'd like to do a little bit more research. Officer Kleinsorgen, I'm sure he's still listening, and I'm sure he's going to be looking into this for me.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have 4th Avenue, which is the last section, last street that we talk about here. It is cut into 2 parts at Brookside Place. Similar to the last section of Spruce Avenue, 4th Avenue is 34 feet wide, so it does not have the space for dedicated bicycle treatments. It also narrows down
61 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour westbound on our street.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, the 100 miles an hour was a leaf blower. We did our research on that one. It was an anomaly.
Oh, yeah.
Good news.
Yeah.
Almost had a fucking stroke.
A leaf blower?
That's bullshit, but whatever.
Leaf blowers can set off the radar on a radar trailer, yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you for letting us know. We
Just type it right now. Highly doubt it. I live here.
Okay.
It was me.
Me. I drive 1,000 miles an hour on my street every day through the point.
Okay. We can definitely. Okay, that's actually good to know that the residents living here feel like it's not that high. So that's good feedback. Maybe the problem is not aggravated as we would have thought.
I don't think I said that.
No.
I put it in the chat earlier, but when you did the south side of Town Street, Center, and Spruce, instead of maximum speed, you had percentage of violations, which I think gives a much broader and realistic synopsis of what goes on those streets. And then maximum speed, I sympathize with the residents who read that and their minds are just blown and they're very upset. So I just want to make sure that when the final product comes out, that it's consistent. So obviously, I think that the percentage of violations, which is still concerning, it was over 70% on those streets, but it's a different kind of concerning than when you see 100 miles per hour, which was caused by a leaf blower, and maybe some of these other extreme numbers are caused by similar outliers the chief explained. So will you be able to just fix that in the final version?
Yeah, that's a great feedback. I think we'll try to make it as consistent as possible. But I also want to mention that the reason for that difference is we are having we are using two different types of data sets here. And one has one variable, but the another one has another variable. So it depended on that. But that's a great feedback, and I think we'll try to make it as consistent as possible and also include percent violations if that's available. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So we are also here looking at the average daily traffic here, 2,100 to roughly 2,300 in either direction. Yes, moving forward. Here we'll look into a simple illustration of a raised crosswalk or speed hump treatment. And actually the logic for this treatment was that some people were going to very higher limits, like speed limits. So before we do that, this is a quick reminder slide on raised crosswalk and speed humps. This treatment is particularly effective for reducing vehicular speeds. And recall that they can be designed for a broader, more flatter, bicycle-friendly design that's also comfortable for emergency vehicles. This design will cause discomfort to drivers at higher speeds only, with little to no effect at speeds lower than 25. Yeah, and we recommend a raised crosswalk treatment on 4th Avenue at Walnut Street. This is how it could look like, coupled with sidewalk extensions and tighter curb radii. And the logic was that this reduced speed limit, like reducing speeds here, could also help the people left turning into this new development or turning into Walnut Street, increasing safety for bicyclists. Yes, so any feedback for 4th Avenue?
So just a little bit of discussion about the future development. Mayor Tedesco notes we have received the site plan for the development. That's correct, and thank you for that. And I don't see any raised hands or further questions. Just one comment that 4th Avenue is a mess.
Okay.
Oh, and Kyle does ask if there's any thoughts on having an always stop at that intersection.
that seems like a good idea that we can add on to in our recommendations. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we are done. And if you have any additional comments or feedback, you can still keep posting it in the chat and we'll take a look at all of them. You can also send your additional comments and suggestions to this email. And since we'll share this presentation and it's recording with you in a follow-up email, you'll have this email address, and all the comments are due by August 25, 2020. Does anyone have any other questions or comments that you would like to discuss right now?
Jonathan noted in chat that the four-way stop on Chestnut and 4th and Westfield doesn't work well because drivers roll through it. So that's in Westfield, so you don't have that on the map. And I see Russ Graham has a hand raised. Russ, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. I wanted to ask, how does Garwood compare to other towns you've looked at, you know, from a standpoint of the amount of traffic we have and the amount of bikers we may have, our sidewalk conditions, stuff like that? Is that something you've looked at?
Me, not really, because I like this study, and the scope of this study was specifically limited to Garwood's boundary. But James, would you like to take that if you have any thoughts on that?
So this year, we're also doing bicycle network plans similar to this in Manville and in Cranberry. So they're both, I mean, they have, Cranberry's pretty different. Manville's a little similar. But in terms of the neighboring towns, we did work with Westfield last year. We did a walkable workshop on North Avenue. And in Cranford, we looked at the suggestion of closing a street downtown to turn it into a public plaza by the post office. But we haven't looked at their bicycle networks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know, Liza, you're on the call from the county. If you have any thoughts about that question?
Yeah, I was, as I'm looking at the sections of this presentation, and it's very thorough, I wonder if it would be helpful for people to see, as requested earlier, an aerial view of a section of the street would have helped people. But I think a layout of everything you're recommending and where the sharrows will be, and where the bike paths will, which streets will have the bike paths, so people can get a sense of a flow.
Yeah.
And which you can't do that with, you're going into detail, which is really critical. But I'm just wondering if it would assist everybody to kind of get the, you know, the bigger picture, and then they can kind of better appreciate what you're trying to do on all these streets, and then they can get a, you know, better sense of where it works and where you can maybe even make it work better.
Yeah, that's a great feedback. Like a whole borough level plan can show how it all ties together and how the network flows. So yeah, we can definitely look into adding that scale in the final report. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a chat question from Joseph. Is there any option of utilizing light up stop yield signs that a biker or pedestrian can push when they plan to cross?
Do you have any specific intersection or location in mind? Okay.
I would suggest that for 4th and Walnut, for sure.
Yeah.
Someone else echoes that.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you. Yeah.
The chief of police, because I mean, we've gotten so many concerns on that particular intersection. Just people trying to walk across the street because the traffic can be very heavy after college classes get out from Union County College. That's a heavily driven route. People drive up from Brookside, make the left on the Walnut on their way to the Parkway. You know, they drive through Garwood to get to Central in Westfield, so and going through Clark. So I know I saw it when I worked. I would get to that intersection about 20-25 minutes after 5, and I knew it was mostly young, people coming from the college that were driving through, and it can be a parade. And my wife commutes, so she walks home. She gets off the train at 6 after 5. So she's hitting that intersection at 20 after walking home, because I live on Liberty Court off 4th. So it's been a very serious problem. She's almost been hit a number of times because people don't stop.
Yeah, that's a great feedback and great experience, and it's great that you shared it. We can definitely recommend it and add it. Yes.
Good.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
And Lisa Lee did note that a rapid flashing beacon is about $7,000 and is a very helpful signal. So that is one of those pedestrian activated ones. And Joseph also provided a link to something similar to that.
Okay, thank you. And we are closer to our time. So we can have your additional comments sent to this email. And do you want to take it from here?
Sure.
Sorry, I noticed Kyle hasn't spoken before and he's trying to raise his hand.
Okay.
I want to give him a chance to just speak quickly.
Sure.
Yes.
I'm an actual resident on 4th Ave, and I work from home, so I'm here all the time. Just a note. So traffic funnels from Westfield in the morning, whether it be heading to the Parkway in Cranford or if they're just going to their jobs, but it also funnels down the street that school drop-offs on. So it's Walnut. You get a very odd divergence. Either they go down Brookside, but it literally diverts people down past our school, which is just a disaster in the morning. Because I walk my son to school every day, and it's a mess. So now not only are you talking about people on a bicycle, but you're talking about kids walking. So it is a massive concern that I think I've voiced on numerous occasions. But something really should be done. That I just needed to say my piece. So that was that.
Oh yeah, thank you. So there's some traffic, cut through traffic that goes to Walnut, turns here and goes to Walnut?
It comes down 4th Ave. Typically it'll come off of Brookside out of Westfield or Benson out of Westfield, which basically turns into 4th Ave in Garwood. And then people will cut in to get to either North Ave or cross over to South Ave, or, if they're heading into Clark. So in the morning, particularly roughly around 7:30 in the morning till about 8:15, 8:30, which is prime time for bringing kids to school, you get a very heavy flow of traffic that comes down 4th and makes the right on the Walnut, which is diverting people. We're literally funneling people. We're a shortcut out of Cranford and Westfield, and it's funneling people past our school, at prime school drop-off time.
Yeah.
It's kind of insane, to be honest with you. And, on non-prime times, there is a lot of speeding on our street. So.
Thank you. That's a great feedback. Yeah.
All right, this is Keith. I just wanted to thank everyone for all of their thoughtful input today. There are a lot of challenges, as you've noted, in response to the very different components, very different streets that we were able to look at. As you might imagine, it was a different kind of experience, not being able to witness firsthand a lot of the different dynamics on the roadway there. And it's really important that you were here today to clear some of that up and give us some more input and data to look at. Anecdotes you know, the number of great ideas came up. There's a lot of different complete streets treatments, and there's no one size fits all solution. So this is, you know, from what I saw today, there's a lot of challenges in this very small town, where even within one block, like on 2nd Ave, the cross section changes 3 times within one block. So we're looking at, from a data standpoint, and thankfully there was a lot of good data that we were able to look at with the police being able to provide speed data, and then hearing the additional anecdotes from residents and so forth. So there is a lot of things that we can look at and come back with I think a stronger plan, thanks to your input. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'll just mention, keep those comments coming. You'll be getting an email from me in the next day or so with a link to today's presentation and a place for you to submit your comments. And as Ashna said, we'll be taking those till August 25th. And if you have any other questions or suggestions, feel free to email me at theheasleyA@tcnj.edu. And I do want to thank everyone for staying on for so long today and giving us, as Keith mentioned and Ashna mentioned, this great feedback.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate all your hard work on this and look forward to continuing to work together. I do want to thank everyone for joining, taking the time out of their busy lives to give the valuable input. It wasn't just comments, but ideas, great questions, nice back and forth between residents helping there. So I very much look forward to the final product and then continuing the debate further. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ashna, any other last words?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. But send us your feedback, send us your comments on the email address. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.